morning, my name is Hannah McCandless, and my senior individual performance is called Podiums for Passion and Peace, the story of Bernadette, Devlin, and Betty Williams. The debate that took place in Northern Ireland during the second half of the 20th century did not include podiums or moderators. It was a debate of ideologies, between those that were willing to fight for justice and those who simply wanted to see an end to the violence. The terror that ripped apart the streets of Northern Ireland was witnessed by thousands. However, it inspired Bernadette Devlin and Betty Williams to be more than just witnesses. In 1922, when the Republic of Ireland gained its independence from the British, the northern region of Ireland remained part of the UK. Northern Ireland was a melting pot of Catholic nationalists who favored a united Irish state and Protestant Unionists who favored the existing link with the British. The two groups resided in an uneasy peace until the 1960s, when worldwide movements for change reached across the Atlantic Ocean and once again ignited conflict. In 1969, violence broke out in Londonderry. The violence continued for 30 years. By 2001, 4,000 people lay dead. In the aftermath of 16,000 bombings lay strewn across Irish neighborhoods. Bernadette Devlin, known as Fidel Castro in a miniskirt, was the youngest serving member of Parliament and a fiery socialist who fought for justice, while Betty Williams, a thoughtful housewife, argued instead for peace. Unfortunately, in Northern Ireland, peace and justice simply couldn't go hand in hand. Our story opens on January 30th, 1972. On Bloody Sunday, as the historic date came to be known, British paratroopers opened fire on crowds of unarmed nationalist protesters, killing 13 people immediately. Bernadette Devlin was among the protesters there that day, and the next day in Parliament, she violently shared her anger at what she had witnessed. Excuse me, at this time I'd like to make a statement about what happened on the floor this morning. I am the only member of Parliament who witnessed the events yesterday in the Bogside. And yet today, during the floor debate, that lying, murdering hypocrite Reginald Maudlin wouldn't let me get a word into the debate for the 13 people that were killed. So I marched across the floor and hit him across the face as hard as I could with my fist. My only regret is that I didn't seize Mr. Maudlin by the throat while I had the chance. What happened yesterday in the Bogside was mass murder by the army. Those bastards shot up a peaceful march and then proceeded to let loose with bloodthirsty gusto onto anything that strayed into their sights. The Provisional and Official Irish Republican Army have both said that they'll kill 13 British paratroopers in vengeance for those that were killed on Sunday. That's 26 coffins going home to England, and I swear to God I won't shed a tear over a single one of them. Violence and discrimination by the state is unacceptable and a violation of human rights. No amount of peaceful protest can stop injustice that comes from the top. Now is the time to take a stand. Bernadette Devlin's cry for action was heard loud and clear across the UK, and 4 more years of violence ensued. On August 10, 1976, British paratroopers killed an IRA volunteer who was driving through the streets of West Belfast. The driver was killed, however his car continued to tear rampantly through the streets. Anne Corrigan was out walking with her 3 young children when the car came hurtling around the corner and all 3 children were killed instantly. Betty Williams was out running her daily errands when she heard about the accident. She rushed to the scene and witnessed the horrific aftermath of the crash. Her life would never again be the same. How can this have happened? I mean, they're just children. 3 beautiful, innocent children, and for what? Why did they have to die? My entire life I've lived in fear of this violence and done nothing about it. But as I stand here and look at the scene before me, I can't look away unchanged. I have to stand up against this violence. Excuse me, do you want peace in our neighbourhoods? If so, sign here. This is a cry from the heart. I believe that what happened to Anne Corrigan's family could have happened to any of us as women while we were out walking with our children. As women, we're the givers of life, so don't we also have a responsibility to be the protectors of it? The Irish Republican Army says that it wants to take back Northern Ireland, but it uses brutal violence as a means to achieve its goal. Nearly 70% of the deaths during this conflict have been the fault of the IRA, and over 600 of those deaths have been civilians. I'm a Catholic woman and I believe in civil rights too, but the violence has to stop. The IRA has gone too far. Thank you for signing. Remember, peace is the only answer. By the next morning, Betty Williams had collected over 6,000 signatures on her petition for peace. May Reed Corrigan, Ann Corrigan's sister, contacted Betty to see if they could meet sometime. Later that month, both women proudly read the declaration of their newly found organization, the Peace People. The group had only one goal in mind: an end to the violence in Northern Ireland. Bernadette Devlin, on the other hand, continued to fight hard for justice. In the midst of making petroleum bombs out of milk bottles and building barricades, Bernadette Devlin had only become more entrenched in her side of the argument. Thank you all for joining me today at this demonstration. For 50 years since I've been static in Northern Ireland. We are catching up on 50 years of history over the course of just a few years. But never again will the unionist government misgovern us the way it has since this country was created. The people have made their situation clear. We will fight for justice, even if it means creating terror and violence. Because the fact of the matter is, more people will stand by a feigned system, no matter how illegal, than will stand by an unjust government. The people have made their situation clear. We will fight for justice. We will fight for justice. We will fight for justice. Our day will come. As Bernadette Devlin continued to fight for justice at any cost, Betty Williams and the Peace People continued to cross peace lines and advance into IRA territory, demanding an end to their violence. The words are simple, but the path is not easy. Violence has become a tradition in Northern Ireland. It's become an easy answer to a hard problem. But we say no more. We say no more to violent traditions and easy answers. When we feel angry and persecuted, it's easy to resort to violence. But what we must start doing, both in Northern Ireland and around the world, is we must start looking beneath the surface. We must fix the injustice that lies in our hearts before we fix the injustice that lies in our worlds. As an organization whose goal is peace, the Peace People give a voice to the silent majority of Northern Irish citizens who want an end to the violence, not war and not justice. Because the fact is, peace is not just one answer to this conflict. It's the only answer that guarantees our lives and the lives of our children. Remember, peace is the only answer. The only answer is peace. In 1976, Betty Williams was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which she proudly accepted on behalf of the Peace People. Although this was a tremendous accomplishment, it was the beginning of the end for Betty Williams and the Peace People. Distracted by the fame and money she had come into from winning the award, Betty lost her vision of peaceful Northern Ireland. She left the Peace People and emigrated to the United States. And although Bernadette Devlin did not win re-election to Parliament in 1974, she continued to pursue an active role in the fight for social justice. In 1999, the final version of the Good Friday Agreement went into effect. The agreement finally formally ended the Northern Irish Troubles. Betty Williams had been included in the creation of the document, which stresses a commitment to ending civil rights problems through strictly peaceful and diplomatic means. Bernadette Devlin, on the other hand, has publicly opposed the instatement of the document. Though Northern Ireland continues to witness occasional acts of violence, the tragedies serve only as a reminder of the region's not-so-distant past. In the preceding decade, Northern Ireland has made remarkable bounds towards improved diplomatic relationships with the UK. As the diplomacy improves, the debate continues. One fought for justice at any cost, even if it meant creating terror and violence in the neighborhoods she held so dear. The other fought for peace as the answer to all conflict, that in order to overcome injustice, we must first overcome the differences between us. Their story is powerful, but not unique. Betty Williams and Bernadette Devlin simply give a face and a name to an ancient debate that will exist as long as injustice and conflict do. Because whether you are here, in the streets of Derry, Northern Ireland, or around the world in Baghdad or Jerusalem, the debate between peace and justice never ceases.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions and then we'll get down the stage set. So you mentioned that part of your inspiration was your mother's trip as a college student, and So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I guess my family is Irish. I come from, a Scots-Irish family. And so I guess, you kind of never, you think war zone, you think, the Middle East, you think, tribal Africans fighting for territory. But you don't think of, a European country in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So I guess my notion of Ireland had always been, like I said, this peaceful, rolling green hills area. And then when my mom told me that story, it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that the region had this horrible, history marked with violence and terror and pain and hatred ingrained into their society. And I think that, I went into it not knowing a lot about it, and I wanted to share that with others just to kind of open other people's eyes to that, because I think really not very many people truly understand the depth and the, kind of how ingrained this conflict has become in Irish society.
How exciting it was to interview.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Well, so clearly that's the prize for the primary source. But what did you find helpful in the form of secondary sources?
In secondary sources, I would say definitely the biographies of the two women, I think, were helpful because coming from the women themselves, they, will not share like the negative things with you, I think. And so I think that the secondary sources really help in kind of offering an alternate bias to what you are exposed to through primary sources. So, Betty Williams didn't mention anything about herself leaving the Peace People and kind of having this scandal with, their fiscal practices, but I think, so that was helpful to have those secondary sources to kind of open my eyes to that so that I got a more well-rounded interpretation of what these two women were really like.